Hey, you're listening to the Intentional Documentary Podcast. So glad to have you. Around here, I'm gushing over the stories behind the pictures that we freaking love of our own lives. You know, the ones we hold as high value and iconic, because this is where photography meets real life. I'm your host, Marie Moss, and I believe that the best way to approach your photography is through your lens, your way. Through insightful conversations with photographers, I'll explore preserving life with your camera and using what lights you up to grow your brand. Let's get started. When was the last time you connected to other people, whether in your business or just in your everyday life, without an agenda? You just checked in to say hello, to ask, how are you doing? Or how's that one thing going? For no other reason than the sake of connection. I'm asking because I'm kind of going through some stuff today. It's, at the time of recording this, it's Monday, April 30th. Last week, I had my surgery that I mentioned, I don't remember, in episode 8 or 9. And while I'm just still kind of recovering, I don't know, I just feel kind of blue today, kind of down. A lot of that stems from I didn't get the greatest sleep last night, and then I had some tech issues. So all of that, and then layer on the fact that I kind of let my tech issues take over and I didn't eat when I should have, so I started to feel a little bit hangry. I just have been feeling kind of blue for the last hour or so. And I started to reflect on who I've heard from and who I haven't since my surgery last week. There are some people, like a mentor, for example, and a couple of really good friends who I would have thought I would have heard a good luck with your surgery or a how are you doing on the other side of it. And I've literally heard nothing from them. So my feelings are kind of hurt. You know what that's like when you're going through something and you don't hear from the people who you care about? I mean, let's face it, we know they're busy and life is going on, but it feels good to know that they've went out of their way just to check in and show that they care, right? Just with a simple text message or a phone call or whatever. And then on the other side of that coin, there have been a couple of people who I've heard from, and it's been like this delightful surprise. One of them was a past student, and we were emailing back and forth, not about the surgery stuff at all, but she remembered that I had mentioned it like a month ago, and she was like, oh, hey, how's that going? And then the person who watched my kids, I kind of thought my son may have been a terror and maybe I would probably never hear from her again. But what prompted me to start recording this was I got a text message from her asking, how are you feeling? And I don't even really know this person. I hired her through a site that it's kind of like a care.com type of a thing, but it's more of a local service and it's just for sitters, and they offer overnight care. And we did a test run with her the week before, and then she watched the kids overnight a couple of nights, got them to school, picked them up while Dave and I were in Atlanta. And that's it. That's all I know of her. And so to get that text message from her, to get that question from that past student, I mean, that meant the world. So I wanted to record this to sort of just bottle up how I'm feeling on both sides of that. I don't want to dwell too much on the people I haven't heard from. Like I said, I get it. People are busy. 100%. There are no ill intentions towards me. It's not like they're like, oh, how can I not reach out to Marie and make her feel better? And just as a disclaimer or a PSA, I should say, I'm not someone who's super needy. I've just noticed, to me in a relationship, one of the things that I value most is connection without an agenda on both sides, for both parties to reach out just to say, hey, how are you doing? Not just one-sided. And there are a few relationships in my life, I'm sure we all have relationships like this, where it just feels like you're always the one who's reaching out to check in and say hi, and the other person's just sort of like in their own little world. And you feel that, but you still care about that person. Maybe you just don't set that boundary. You kind of let it go, whatever the case may be. And then there's other people who, they treat you like that, and you're like, all right, well, I'm done with this. But, there's a couple people I would have liked to have heard from, and I haven't. So my feelings are kind of hurt, but not really, because like I said, I know they're not doing something intentional, and I don't get stuck on that kind of thing. But I really want to highlight just those two people who I did hear from. Man, it feels so good. And I want to just sort of bring this full circle as a reminder that we have the power to be that for other people. I have no doubt that there are some people in our community, maybe past students or customers, or just people I've crossed paths with as an acquaintance, or friends and family in my personal life, who would listen to this and think, eat your own freaking words, Marie, because I'm not perfect in this area either. Even though I say that I value like being reached out to. So I think I'm pretty hyper aware of, you know what, it's been a while since I've talked to my friend Jen. I'm going to send her a text and see if we can get on a phone date, or to other friends and family and whoever. I wonder how that one student was doing. And so I reach out. But I'm not perfect. I know there's people who slip through the cracks. So I just wanted to bring this back to you and just ask that question again. When was the last time you connected without an agenda, connected to anybody who matters to you, even if it's an acquaintance? Maybe they're not somebody super valuable in your inner circle of people, but they're another human being. You respect them. Can you make a little more time to just say, hey, how are you doing? Because I can guarantee if you lead with more of that as your to-do list actions, it doesn't have to be like something you're doing all day, every day. Maybe it's not even something you're doing every single day. But what if you just like commit to, say, 3 people a week, just checking in with them for the sake of checking in with them, not checking in with them with this hope of, oh, maybe if I reach out to them and see how they're doing, maybe they will book with me, or whatever it is that you might want out of another person. Like, no agenda, just connection. It is one of the most, if not the most profound things that you can do just as a human, not just as a business owner, but as a human, because let me tell you, and this is just a testament to the people who reached out to me this week, or within the last few days, I should say, that past student, babysitter, that was memorable. That made such a big impression with me. It almost speaks louder than the people I haven't heard from. Like that, whatever. I didn't hear from people. Yeah, that sucks. But gosh, those people that I did hear from, wow. Like that says so much about their character. And you have that power to be that for somebody else. So let's think for a second. Think of your friends, your family, like the obvious people that you could reach out to, that maybe it's been a few days or a few weeks or a few months or a few years. You could reach out just to say hello. This is what's going on in my life. I was just thinking about you. I would love to know what's going on in your life. Give me an update. Or maybe it was somebody you're bouncing business ideas with, and they were just rapid firing off some ideas and inspiration, and you're listening. Like, check back in and say, oh, hey, how's that going? Have you made any decisions yet? Or maybe it's a simple thank you. What if it's to the very first person who booked with you, or the first person who commented that you can remember on one of the pictures you were brave enough to share publicly after declaring yourself a professional photographer, or whatever your title is. There's somebody who's been in the back of my brain that this episode, I'm hoping, holds me accountable, because I've been wanting to reach out to her. She's another photographer, and gosh, a year and about 3 months ago, she was starting a personal photo project and was asking for some stories on the perspective around the caregivers of Alzheimer's patients. And I stepped up and just sent her a quick Facebook message to tell my story about what it was like being a part-time caregiver to my grandma. And in the process of writing that story, it was actually like one of the breadcrumbs in discovering or rediscovering just the root of what photography does for me. And just it led me into intentional documentary more than I could have imagined by writing out this story. And I've been thinking about that lately and thinking about how I was like, she was just, asking for stories for her own thing, and she has no idea what a big impact she made by just posing that question. Like, what was your experience in caregiving with an Alzheimer's patient? And by opening or creating that space for me to write that out, it moved something so deep in me, and I've been wanting to she has no idea. And she wasn't even trying to help me in any way, but she did. And I've been wanting to acknowledge her and send her a little thank you note. And I know that if that were me, it would brighten my day. You know what I mean? So that's what's on my mind. It's not so much, like I said, that it's, the people I haven't heard from, like, yeah, that sucks, but that's not a big deal. What's exciting here is just that we have the power to be the person who does show up and who does care. And one way, if you're like, well, gosh, like, I know so many people, how do I even pay? Like, how do I do this? Is there like a tracking system? Well, there doesn't have to be. Like, you can make it as hard as you want it to be, but you can also make it as easy as you want it to be. One trick that I have, this was actually a lesson at the end of Mastery Moment Seekers. Module 8 was all about reservicing past clients. And basically it was like a system that I created that I would reach out to people every quarter. And I put it in a binder. I had all these like profile pages for people, and I moved them throughout the binder. The binder was organized into months and all this stuff. So there's definitely like systems that you can create to really stay on top of it. And I think it's a great idea inside of your business, especially for your clients and people who have invested their money and their trust and their time in you. But you could just have a simple list as well. And if you go to the show notes, fearlessandframed.com/intentional documentary podcast, and look for this episode, I will link to my marketing makeover bundle, because there's a document in there that's the master dreaming list. And it's basically just a contact list of names and then a method of contact. And then there's 4 columns so that you can check off that you've connected with them at least one time during that quarter. So, the first quarter of the year, second quarter of the year, and so on and so on. So it's just a really easy way to pay attention as well. But you don't have to make it that hard. I think naturally you will gravitate to, especially in your personal life, the people who you care most about, because they'll just surface. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm going to sign off. When was the last time that you connected without an agenda? Go brighten somebody's day. Bye for now. Thank you to our podcast team for making the Intentional Documentary podcast possible. Our sound editor, Lucy Burgess, Minimag designer, Jillian Adriana, and our show notes manager, Ebony Rivera. Special thank you to our episode guests for openly sharing their insight. And thank you for listening, of course. Please hit the review tab to leave a rating. I'd love to read about your favorite episodes and what has really clicked for you. And remember, the only way to approach your photography is through your lens, your way. Photograph freely, and I'll see you next time. Visit fearlessandframed.com/intentional documentary podcast for this episode and all past episodes, show notes, and mini mags.